In the Pokemon TCG, what cards do you think of when you think of cards that have a huge impact on the competitive meta? Maybe it's the powerful trainer cards and format staples, like Boss's Orders, Iono, or Ultra Ball. Maybe it's some Pokemon that are in almost every deck, like Pheasantipede EX or Monkey Dory. Or maybe it's some lesser used cards that have won players' tournaments, like TM Turbo Energize or TM Devolution. No matter what you thought of, the point is clear. There are a lot of impactful cards in the Pokemon TCG. So many to the point that remembering all the amazing high value cards from over the years can be a bit difficult. So today I'm here to share the stories of some of the Pokemon TCG's most bizarre tech cards. So let's talk about it. The first card I'm going to talk about today is from the late Sun and Moon era of the TCG, and it's a one-of tech card that I think might have saved the entire format. You see, after the release of Unbroken Bonds in 2019, this Blacephalon card became the most terrifying single prize deck in the game. Its attack Fireball Circus costs 3 fire energy and does 50 damage for each basic fire energy you choose to discard from your hand. Basically, it's Goldango's attack Make It Rain, but for 2 more energy on a single prize basic Pokemon. This energy cost in almost any other meta would be unusable, but in this format, the Welder supporter card existed, which is one of the most powerful forms of energy acceleration we have ever seen in the Pokemon TCG. You can attach up to 2 basic fire energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon, and if you attached any energy, you draw 3 cards. Not only can one Welder plus a manual attachment power up Fireball Circus in a single turn, but the draw 3 allowed for a way easier time finding energy. The deck also had access to a ton of other powerful fire support cards. The Giant Hearth Stadium discards a card from your hand and searches the deck for 2 basic fire energy and puts them into your hand, which was perfect in any Welder deck. Fire Crystal puts 3 fire energy from the discard pile into your hand, which is perfect for fueling Fireball Circus turn after turn. Fiery Flint discards 2 cards from your hand and searches the deck for up to 4 fire energy and puts them into your hand. Once again, a perfect fit. The Heat Factory Prism Star Stadium card discards a basic fire from hand and draws 3 cards, which is incredible draw power for any fire deck at the time. Victini Prism Star has the Infinity attack that does 20 damage for each basic energy in your discard pile, and then it shuffles all those energy into your deck for just 2 fire energy. This was a perfect late game closer and also another way to recover energy. Also, Blacephalon, by nature of being an Ultra Beast Pokemon, had lots of support cards that could benefit it. The Ultra Space Stadium card just searches the deck for an Ultra Beast and puts it into your hand, which adds more Pokemon search options to the deck. Beast Ring provided some secondary energy acceleration in case you couldn't find Welder and had to settle for another supporter like Green's Exploration. Beast Bringer, if the user has 6 prize cards remaining, allows the Ultra Beast it's attached to take an extra prize card when it knocks out a GX Pokemon. This meant that at the beginning of the game, Blacephalon could take 4 prize cards on a tag team Pokemon with a Beast Bringer attached. And Lucamine Prism Star, once the opponent has 3 prize cards remaining exactly, prevents all damage done to your Ultra Beast Pokemon next turn. Although this didn't come up often unless you had the Wishful Baton tool card attached, which did rotate, as we'll get to later. This Blacephalon list got 3rd at NAIC 2019, right before the rotation that took place prior to the 2019 World Championships. Unified Minds released at the same time as the rotation, and the Pokemon Company knew that if it went unchecked, Blacephalon could become a nightmare for many decks in the game. So they printed this Tapu Fini card. Nature Wave does 100 damage for 3 energy, which is obviously not great. But there's a catch. If your opponent has any Ultra Beast Pokemon in play, like say Blacephalon, the attack only costs a single colorless energy. This was huge, since not only did Nature Wave KO baby Blacephalon and Blacephalon GX in one shot, but it was also super splashable due to its energy cost, while also being a single prize Pokemon, which could allow your deck to trade favorably into the single prize Blacephalons your opponent would flood you with. Once Sword and Shield and Rebel Clash released and ADP reached full power, Baby Blacephalon was one of the few decks that could beat it, since it was very easy to win the prize trade by taking a KO the same turn ADP used Altered Creation. So, after Blacephalon proved its strength, Tapu Fini became one of, if not the most common tech card in the game, especially in ADP decks. This one card tech could turn an otherwise abysmal matchup into one that was very winnable, since after Altered Creation, each Tapu Fini swing would take 2 prize cards. So even after ADP was taken down and Blacephalon was up 3-6, so long as you could keep a 1 prize board state, or if you just hoped they whiffed a gust, you could get into a good enough spot to win the game and the prize trade. It wasn't just ADP though. Any deck that even had a chance to struggle versus Blacephalon could run this card. Fire Toolbox decks, Mewtwo and Mew tag team decks, Spiritomb, Lucario Melmetal, Lucario Melmetalization, Dragapult, and even Blacephalon itself were running Tapu Fini, mostly as just a one-of tech. This card honestly might have saved the game in my opinion, since even just by looking at results, it's clear that ADP and Blacephalon were the 1-2 of this format. It's clear to see that the decks that Blacephalon could beat, ADP couldn't, creating this awful situation where a deck either lost to ADP and beat Blacephalon or vice versa. But with Tapu Fini, a deck that beat ADP consistently could tech Tapu Fini to beat Blacephalon, meaning they could have a chance in the metagame, which widened the meta vastly. It's undeniable that Tapu Fini is one of the most important tech cards of its time, and one of the most impactful cards at slowing down one of the scariest single prize decks in the history of the game. While Tapu Fini was clearly printed to deal with Blacephalon, this next card wasn't printed to deal with anything specific. And if I had to guess, Pokemon themselves probably didn't expect this card would be essential to tournament winning decks. Larvitar. Not Tyranitar, not even Pupitar, Larvitar. Lost Thunder is one of the greatest sets in Pokemon history, but never in all my life did I think Larvitar would be a standout card in this game-changing expansion. Second Strike does 10 damage for 2 colorless energy, which is obviously atrocious, but if the defending Pokemon already has 3 or more damage counters on it, this attack does a total of 80 damage, which is still not incredible. Obviously it seems super weak at first glance, but that's why the meta matters so much. You see, Pokemon like Pikachu and Zekrom Tag Team and Zoroark GX were super strong during Sun and Moon, and they were all weak to fighting. The tool card Choice Band also let the Pokemon it was attached to do 30 more damage to Pokemon GX, before applying weakness or resistance. This meant that if a Zoroark GX had 30 damage or more on it, and your Larvitar had a Choice Band, it would one-hit KO for 1 DCE with a 1 prize Pokemon in your active spot. And it would also do the same for Pikarom as well, since Choice Banded Second Strike would do 220 when hitting for weakness, plus the 30 needed for the attack's secondary effect, and 3 prize cards were yours. This was so powerful in spread decks, since these archetypes would usually be able to put 30 or more damage on every Pokemon on the opponent's side of the field, so being able to have a 1 prize OHKO attacker for 1 energy for some of the game's best and most popular attackers was truly incredible for these decks. And this Larvitar card won the Johannesburg special event in a Weezing spread deck. This deck would use Weezing and this promo Tapu Koko card to spread damage, and Larvitar was mainly used as a cleanup attacker on fighting weak Pokemon. It also won the Auckland special event in a spread damage based Zoroark GX Dugong deck. It used this Dugong card as well as triple acceleration energy, as well as Zoroark GX's own attack Riotous Beating to spread damage over multiple turns. And Larvitar was a great cleanup attacker once again to finish off low HP threats or higher HP fighting weak Pokemon. As crazy as it may sound, Larvitar has more major tournament wins in the Masters division than Goldengo EX. Yes, Goldengo EX. It's so crazy how much double colorless energy warped the game around it, and I'm honestly happy that we don't have DCE right now, even though it can make a card like Larvitar into tournament winning material. The last card I'm going to talk about today is actually pretty recent, and one of the most hilarious interactions in Pokemon history in my opinion. I'm sure by now you all know about the infamous Snorlax stall deck, but in case you don't, it's basically a deck that's sole purpose was to trap a useless Pokemon in the active spot of your opponents, unable to attack or retreat, and then you would wait until your opponent decked out and you would win the game. With cards like Erica's Invitation, Accompanying Flute, Echoing Horn, and Mantine, it could almost always get something stuck in the active spot that you didn't want there. So, the same set that Pokemon reprinted Counter Catcher, the card that pushed Snorlax over the edge into a tournament-winning deck, they also made sure to put in a check to it. Minior. It has an ability that flings it into the active spot whenever you attach an energy to it, which would break the lock on the current Pokemon. And its attack does 20 damage times the amount of energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. And since Minior is a fighting Pokemon and Snorlax has only 150 HP and a 4 retreat cost, Minior would one-shot a Snorlax for 1 energy, often the same energy you would use to break the lock. However, it isn't that simple. Despite Snorlax losing Echoing Horn to rotation, the set that released with the rotation, Temporal Forces, released the Rescue Board tool card. This card was the primary retreat reduction card until Air Balloon released again. It reduced the retreat cost by 1 colorless energy of the Pokemon it was attached to. So, Minior now would only do 120 damage to a Snorlax if it had a Rescue Board attached, which is still enough to pressure the Snorlax enough into healing or switching out. However, Rescue Board has a secondary effect that you would almost never see come up. If the Pokemon the card was attached to had 30 or less HP remaining, it would give a free retreat cost to the user. So, if a Minior swung into a Snorlax that had a rescue board attached, not only would the Minior not get the one-hit KO, but then the secondary effect of rescue board activated, preventing Minior from doing any damage to the Snorlax again because Snorlax had 0 retreat cost now. Meaning the Snorlax could just trap Minior in the active spot, turning this usually reliable counter into a liability. This combo of Snorlax and 1-2 rescue board never won anything really, but whenever Minior would start to pop up, the Lax players would often start running rescue boards to counter the counter. And then the Minior players would cut Minior, and then Lax would cut rescue board, and the cycle would repeat. It was a fun ongoing side story for some major events for a while, and as a Snorlax player who always paid attention to switching outs in opponents' decks at major tournaments, it was really funny seeing the cards go in and out a few times. I just find it truly hilarious that the card that was meant to counter Snorlax ended up getting turned into a liability by the same deck it was meant to destroy. Also, speaking of Snorlax, I thought I might as well mention this 1-1 Gengar line that some Stage 2 decks started running after Snorlax won the Gdansk Regional Championships. This is possibly the biggest overreaction in Pokemon history, since this card was literally useless unless you're playing against Snorlax. Gengar had the ability that if it was in play once during your turn, you could switch your active Pokemon, essentially turning Snorlax's ability off. But if you prized your Gengar or your Ghastly and your 1 copy of Hisuian Heavy Ball, it was often as if you didn't tech for it at all, and you would usually lose the game. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, it would mean a lot if you would please subscribe. Let me know what you thought of these cards in the comments below. Anyways, take care, have a good one.